our community engagement team at Paisley Park. And I'm going to hand over to, what I will ask everybody this evening, could I please ask you to mute? So during the session tonight, Kat will talk for about 50 minutes, and then we'll have a question and answer time at the end. If you do have questions along the way, please pop them into the chat screen and I'll make a note of them and we can ask Kat at the end. So Penny, what I think I'll do is I'll hand over to you to say a quick hello, and then we'll introduce Kat.
Welcome everybody, thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Penny. I'm the Curriculum and Special Education Mentor for Paisley Park across all our centres, so nationwide. I help educators with their programming.
Ooh. Penny, we've just lost you.
Our kinder information session or school readiness. And we're ready for Kat.
Yeah, so just in terms of today, we will make a recording. If we do have any technical issues, this session will be recorded and we'll email it a link out to you all so you can view.
That's recording now.
Oh, thanks, Penny. So I will introduce Kat. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Paisley Park, Kat is our co-founder, and she started along with co-founder Peter, our organisation a few years back, really with a vision to make a difference to early learning in Australia. She's quite highly regarded in the industry and is a lecturer and almost completed her doctorate. So Kat, if you're there, we can bring you in.
Yes, I'm definitely here, everybody.
Oh, good on you. Hi, Kat. So just in terms of our screens, I will pop off and in terms of video, and then you'll pop up in everybody's screen. Just also confirming that if you can't see the screen share, which is the PowerPoint for this evening, can you please let me know in the chat inbox?
I'll pop off video as well, just so that doesn't cover any of the presentation.
All righty, Kat, I'll hand over.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. And I will probably get myself off video as well, just to avoid sometimes when you've got too many things and too many characters on screen, it can be a little bit disruptive. Now, this session is going to be quite paced. There's a lot of content that I'm covering, but the good news is, as Penny said, we are recording this session and there'll be lots of information shared. So please feel free to let us know if you require any further information, or if you're interested in us contacting you and discussing your needs further. This session really is about sharing the knowledge that I've had and developed over the years about young children. I've been in the early childhood industry for over 25 years. It's an incredible passion of mine. And when Paisley Park was born about nearly 8 years ago now, Peter and I worked really hard to ensuring that we connect with our local communities, and this is why we're providing this as an opportunity and extending our offering beyond families just in our Paisley Park centres. So welcome those of you who are not familiar with us. Please feel free to research a little bit more about us at a later stage. So as I said, I'm going to stop my video, but you'll still hear me. I don't want to distract the screen and the content that's up. So I'll stop my screen now, but that should be fine for you. Now, if you have any problems, please jot things down in that chat space, and Renee can definitely alert me to anything that I need to do. Sometimes the vocals go a bit funny, or there's a bit of freezing. We're all in different places around Australia, and I'm so pleased to have such a good representation. Paisley Park is, of course, across many states: South Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, even Tasmania. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about how different preparation is and just different terminology between states at a later stage in this presentation. The other thing, just FYI, there are two clips as well. So what Penny will do is Penny will come into the screen when there are some YouTube clips. So there will be nothing going wrong at your end with your computer if you think, oh gosh, now something's popped up. So don't worry about that. Pia does the work at the back end, but just note if you have a bit of freezing or if there's any issues with any of the information, that we can send that across to you at a later date. Okay, so let's get started talking about what we're really going to cover tonight. A fair few dot points there. We really want to talk about what readiness is, what research tells us about school readiness, a little bit about school entry, type of schools, strategies to support readiness. As you see, there'll be a video clip there. Do a Paisley Park as well. And just some recommendations from us about preparing your children, some of the key things. We'll also have some interesting advice from a little girl by the name of Annabelle. And we're also sharing some resources. What I would say though, as just if you can mute yourself, I'm getting a little bit of background noise. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Zoom space, it's really important that you mute yourself so that we're not getting that background kind of noise. So I'm not sure if you can be of assistance in the background there, Renee, and just ensure that happens. Okay. All right. Well, what does it really mean to be school ready? There's a really good definition there on screen. It's really a measure of how prepared a child is to succeed in school, but it encompasses a lot of things, a lot of key learning areas for children, cognitively, physically, socially, and emotionally. And there are key skills, characteristics, and dispositions in children that are presented leading up to the year that a child starts school that alert us to the fact that yes, there are indicators that a child is ready for that transition. And you'll see some links on the bottom. Okay, what I think is important though is for those of you who do have a child in childcare, there are some questions often that are asked about, well, how does childcare impact on a child's readiness? So, Kenya, we can scroll down to the next page. Wonderful, thank you. What research has told us, and there's been a lot of research by the OECD, and as you can see the link on the bottom, growing up in Australia, there's a lot of research that is used between Australia and other developing countries that really looks at milestones of achievement and just success stories in terms of children who've been able to succeed in school. So this is a very important topic, and not just in Australia, but across the world. We know now through research that's been undertaken in 2013 and 2015, in fact, that children who engage in some kind of prior to school context, so what I mean by that is whether it's childcare or preschool or any kind of a context where they've got contact with a lot of children and educators, and there is some formal and informal play-based learning going on, we know that leading up to school transition, when a child has this childcare or preschool experience, they actually perform better. And these NAPLAN scores were taken in year 3, because I'm not sure whether any of you have siblings who are already in school, but the NAPLAN goes throughout secondary school. And we know that the children who had some kind of prior learning tend to transition better. They're more confident.
Sorry, Kat, I've just muted you for a minute. If you could just unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm unmuted now.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely.
Just during this, oh, thanks, Penny.
Sorry, I've had to go in and mute certain people because they're not muted.
I'll thank you for that, Renee. I suppose so long as I'm not muted, that's the main thing, but that's all good.
You're right to go now. Sorry, everybody.
No drama at all. So we'll go on to the next slide, which really looks at some misconceptions that some people have about school preparations or school readiness. And this comes traditionally from our own backgrounds and just, I suppose, conversations with our friends and families about what do I need to do for my child to make sure that they're ready. And those misconceptions really look at specific skill sets. But in reality, what we do know is that children need far more than those kind of rote-like activities. When I mean rote-like activities, I'm referring to things that rely on repetition, use of particular resources like stencils or chanting numbers
Sorry, Kat, you've muted again. Yeah, I'm trying to get people unmuted.
Okay, that's okay. I'm happy. I'm muted now. Good.
You're back. No, you're right. You're right to go.
So what we do know is that some of these experiences that are listed in the top paragraph are important, but in fact they're not as effective as more meaningful experiences. And when I mean meaningful, I mean things that significantly contribute to a child's holistic preparation. We've undertaken lots of conversations with our local schools and teachers over the years, and certainly in all my experience. And some of the most fundamental skills and dispositions that teachers look for children is their ability to be socially and emotionally ready. Throughout the remainder of the workshop, there'll be elements of this repeated, but I just wanted to make it clear at the very beginning, the ability for a child to be able to cope with change, being a confident person in the classroom, being independent and knowing where their own belongings are, ability to make friendships. These are far more more important initially as those readiness skills, because being able to read and write and learn numbers and shapes and all of those things, those types of skills can be taught. But teachers really look at a child's ability to be a confident learner, being able to put up their hand, being able to move in between the classroom. All those things are far more important than perhaps some of those things that we thought might in fact be more important than that, like being able to write their name and all of those things. Whilst yes, that's important, we also want children to feel good about themselves and feel good about being in that particular new place with unfamiliar faces and unfamiliar expectations. So what does that mean for you? It's really about being positive, yeah? And sometimes that's really stressful because as a parent, we've got all sorts of things that we need to be prepared for ourselves. We need to make changes to our own lifestyles. We think to ourselves, gosh, you know, I've taken for granted, and certainly I speak from my own experience. I have a 15-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. They're both now in high school. But even in being in the field for as many years as I have been, I took for granted the changes that I need to make in my own home. The changes in routine, getting their lunch boxes ready, getting them to school at that 8:30, whereas I became very familiar with just dropping children off, you know, at 7:30 in childcare, being able to pick them up, you know, at 6 o'clock, but we don't have that leisure when we're managing the school expectation. So it can be a little bit tricky for us as parents to be positive, but it's so critical, it's so imperative that we speak positively about school. And the best way to be positive is, of course, to have all the information, being informed, knowing what's available, knowing what resources are there for us to access, making good decisions. What that really means about you as a parent is being informed about what's available in your local community, what kind of school you are really thinking about sending your child to. And I'm going to pick up on this content in a moment, but also being informed about your child and having a good understanding of whether they're demonstrating to you the skills and the dispositions and their own feelings about readiness. There's a lot of discussions in media and in published material that talk about holding children back. And of course, there's nothing negative about doing that. So long as within your state, you're in line with what the rules for starting children are in terms of age. And I'm going to cover that in a moment. So that all lines up with making good informed decisions. So what are we doing in this session tonight really? We're answering the questions that we know families have had. When do I send them? As in that particular age, where do I send them? You might be in a community where you might have 6 or 7 schools at your disposal and you might not really be sure which one to send them to. Do you send them to the school where your friends and family have gone in the past? Do you send them somewhere where perhaps you've gained understanding of a new school opening up? And all these questions are flying around in your mind. And the best way for us to answer them with you is to, of course, share some of this information tonight. And then how do I know they're ready? What do I look for in my child? And of course, for those families who are enrolled at our services, what do we do? How do we extend that support in our daily program? And we do a lot of things which we'll share with you tonight. Speaking of the school entry, which I mentioned earlier, you may not be familiar, but those of you who are from different states, as Penny scrolls through, you'll see different rules and regulations around when a child must start school. And whilst there's some differences in states across what the terms are, from kinder to reception to prep, and the different dates and cut-off rules, you need to be familiar with those cut-off rules in your respective states, because if your child's attending in a school that requires early entry, early enrollment preparation, you really need to get all of that information into them. I mean, even if you delay your enrollment by a year, it's still important to have those enrollment forms filled out, just so the school is prepared for the time that you do start your child. Generally speaking, however, as we can see across, just flick back for me, Penny, but generally speaking, children need to be embarking on that readiness process by the time that the year they're turning 5, and in some cases, this can be extended to when they're turning 6. So really important to find out about your state, to what that prep is called. Some schools have preparationary classrooms attached to their school, other states don't. So these are some of the conversations that we've had with many parents, and you'd be surprised how many just aren't sure of how to access that information and resources in their local area, let alone their local state. So please become informed and ask those questions early on. That will lead us to, what type of school should I choose? And there are many schools in your local area. Some of them you're probably familiar with, but some of them you may not be. And we extend that provision of that school relationship with schools that offer varying types of programs. So Penny, you can scroll down to the next slide. Generally, there are 3 types of schools: government schools, and government schools are 100% state funded. So they're not there's, apart from an entry fee, enrollment fee, nominal administrative fee, all fees are covered by funding by that territory or state. Independent or private schools are self-funded, and depending on the type of school, there will be fees from, you could be paying termly fees, yearly fees, and they can become quite expensive. Families who are interested in grammar schools or schools that have been around for a long time and perhaps have an Anglican or some other connection with other churches are also available, like the Catholic Church. All of them do require some fees, of course, whether they're partial fees or full fees. And this is important for you to find out. Sometimes families go through the whole process of enrolling, and then they receive the first bill and they are absolutely mortified by the fees that are associated with a lot of independent schools. That's why it's really important that you find out that information. The quote on the bottom of the slide for me is one of the most important, though. Regardless of what school you choose, school readiness is really about the school being ready for your child. Historically, we've always thought, well, it's really about my child being ready, but I like to talk about the triangle of support. What I mean by that is the school needs to be ready, families need to be ready, and the child needs to be ready. And if we all work together in that collaborative relationship, that ensures that the children transition smoothly and they have a positive experience. And whilst I'm talking, perhaps you might recall your own experience, if you can remember that far back. I mean, in terms of how you felt in your kindergarten grade or primary or even high school, and that level of uncertainty. It really, really important for you to reflect on your own experience, or perhaps a sibling's experience. And sometimes what can happen is, if we have more than 2 children, we think, oh well, my older child copes so well, so I don't have to worry about my second child. But in fact, you'd be surprised. Children have different personalities, they have different needs, and therefore the school really needs to match the needs of your child. That is why I cannot express the importance of you finding out about your school and the kind of programs they offer. We are moving away from that traditional model in schooling where we have one classroom teacher and you might have that 20 or 30 children. Although, those schools typically exist as well. But there's lots of other schools like Montessori and Steiner, and schools that are forest schools where there's a lot of outdoor learning that goes on regardless of weather, where there's those kind of programs that tap into really individualized levels of learning. And they're perfect for children who have particular needs that go beyond what your typical public school can offer. There's also blended classrooms where you might have an environment where you have 3 different grades in the one classroom, and you might have 2 to 3 teachers in the class. I know of a particular school, and I think it's actually St. Bernadette's from memory. Penny would know, being in Victoria when I spent some time in Gisborne, Victoria. So I think it is Bernadette's.
St. Bridget's.
St. Bridget, thank you, Penny. I had the benefit of visiting that school myself a few years ago, and they have open plan learning classrooms where they might have 65 children in the one classroom with 4 or 5 teachers coming in, and it's a collaborative model. So you may choose the path of a traditional one classroom teacher kind of system for your child, and that may be perfectly appropriate. But if you're thinking that your child's displaying particular needs or strengths or characteristics or gifts that require some additional support, I just really encourage you to find out the types of schools that offer this. The other thing that I'll go on to before we hit the video, Penny, is I wanted to extend this further to really talk about the classroom teachers and their levels of experience and the size of the school. So before we hit this video, you may not be familiar with the fact that schools are of different sizes and shapes. So what I mean by that, you might have a single level school where you will have only one kindergarten classroom, 1 year 1 classroom, 1 year 2, and generally they're referred to by units, a 1 unit school or a 2 unit school, where a 2 unit school might be 2 sets of kinder, 2 sets of year 1, 2 sets of year 2, and on it goes. And if you start to do the maths, you can see that some schools are quite small and they might have only 200 to 300 students in them, and that's generally a small school. But you might have a school where there are up to 2,000 children in a school. So when you think about the size of that particular school and your child's school experience, you really need to think about your child's needs before you make that jump, and visit those schools, get to know the immediate classroom environment if your school is receptive to those visits, which no doubt towards the end of the year they generally are. But more on that a little bit later on. I might hand over to Penny now to show you this really great clip, everybody. It's very informative and just harnesses some of the information that I've already covered and will give you some additional ones as well. So I'll mute myself while it's on.
Starting school is a big step for you and your child. Children who make a positive start to school are more likely to feel comfortable and develop a sense of belonging to the school community. They're also more likely to feel excited and motivated to learn. Together, children and their families, early childhood education and care services, and schools help children along their journey. Starting and settling into school is not just about the first day. It begins when children and families start to prepare in the year before and continues as children experience their first days, weeks and months of school.
When the bell rings, you come inside or line up at the door to go outside. You'll get to go to the library and then we'll actually get to choose a book. Write my name, do homework, play, go on an excursion. There's only one teacher and they don't want to get a headache.
Starting school involves a number of changes for children and their families, and everyone reacts differently to these. The The changes that children experience when they begin school relate to the new physical environment, which is often bigger and busier, the new rules and procedures for the school day, the relationships that they'll need to develop with teachers, staff and other children, and of course the new learning experiences that school offers. As a starting point, it can be helpful to think about how your child copes with change and how you've supported them through change before.
We have to wear a special school uniform. We have to wear a school dress if they're a girl. And we need to take a backpack, a school bag, pack my lunchbox with lasagna.
There's a range of skills that your child has been developing that will help them as they settle into school. Some of these areas of development include their social and emotional skills, their independence and their learning skills. Social skills include being able to share and take turns, spending time talking and playing with other children, and understanding how to be a good friend. Being able to manage emotions are important skills for coping with challenges and for getting along with others. The child's independence develops as they're encouraged to do more things for themselves, like getting dressed, packing their bags, making their own decisions. Being able to listen to a story, stay focused on a task, share ideas with other people, and make choices between activities. These provide the basis from which children learn the more academic skills of reading and writing. Children have different rates of development, and they won't all have these skills when they start school, but they will learn and develop them over time.
Sometimes parents worry that their children should be able to write their name or know the alphabet before they start school. These skills are important, but not all children are ready to do this before they start. Building on a child's skills as parents helps ensure they're prepared for the changes that school brings. I guess what parents in school will continue to build these skills. That means emotional skills, social skills, academic and creative skills.
When it was my birthday and my dad left, I was a bit sad. And my mum and dad came to school and they dropped me off. I was a bit sad. Sometimes when you start, you might feel a bit scared, and I feel like, yeah. But I was happy as well to start.
You know, like any parent on the first day, it's quite upsetting seeing a little child and seeing them in their school uniform for the first time in front of the other kids too. It's they actually look so tiny.
I did notice some kids looking a little worried, but I think because most of them had done that transition to school program and the parents had been given literature about how to prepare their kids, I think most kids weren't nervous as such.
What actually happened was that, we took her down there, gave her a quick cuddle, said goodbye, and that's it. She was so excited she just walked off and, we left standing there going, where do we go now?
Making a positive start to school helps your child to continue to develop their social, emotional, independence and learning skills, which all contribute to your child's mental health and well-being. Children who are mentally healthy are better able to meet life's challenges. They're also better learners and have stronger relationships.
Well, thank you everybody for watching that. And let's just recap on a couple of things that were said in that video just about signs your child is ready. There was lots of really good information, but for us at Paisley Park, we look at particular skills, and the 10 down here on the slide will give you a bit of a summary of some of those were mentioned in the video, but some perhaps not in that much detail. Separating easily from you is one of the key indicators. So think about how your child separates from you now. I mean, if you're in a childcare centre or a preschool, that you can witness that yourself every time you leave them. If they're in a childcare environment, then that preparation for transition to the day is also supported by a classroom teacher. But if your child isn't in childcare or preschool and you're thinking about that, look at how they separate when you might leave them with your grandparents or with your friends. Are they kind of holding on to you and not wanting to let you go? Or do they feel quite comfortable and happy that they're going to be engaging in play and fun? And that's generally a good indicator that your child is ready, when they can just go off and play and not be too concerned that you're leaving. Child that is confident, independent. I mentioned this before. When we're thinking about independence and belongings, think about zipping and unzipping and opening lunch boxes and all sorts of things, like school bag, taking off your jumper, putting it back on, undoing things. There's lots of clips and zips and things in the classroom. And remember that your child is not the only child in the classroom, that if a teacher can't attend to each individual child's putting on and off jumpers and shoes and all of those things. So it's really important that you start now on supporting your child's ability to use those little muscles to do all those zips and unzips and pulling up, their pants if they've gone to the bathroom, or their stockings if they're wearing a dress. All of those things we take for granted, because when our children are at home, they ask for help and we help them. But in fact, in a classroom environment, if we're thinking about the bathroom in point number 5, that children quite often go to the bathroom and there's a lock. If you think about a public toilet where they've actually got to turn a knob, in fact, in a childcare space, that doesn't happen. So whenever you get an opportunity and you're out in the shops or you're out and about where your child can actually go into and open and close their own toilet door, that is critical, because that is going to be the expectation in a school classroom. And we get lots of comments from parents who say to us, oh, that was the most frightening thing for them. They've never gotten used to that, because at home, our door's fairly open, and when we ever go out to the shops, I always go in the toilet with them. And of course, that can't happen in a school environment. And generally speaking, that toilet block may in fact be somewhere completely away from the classroom. So again, they need to be independent to walk over there on their own, wash their hands on their own, and no one's really there with them, especially if it's quite a busy school, lots of people are doing things. Knowing their own surroundings, and again, I talk about big schools, because your child might be going over to an oval or to a canteen or to the school hall or the library, all of which could be located completely away from their actual classroom. So they need to be able to navigate their space, and knowing when to go and who to go with and how to use the particular resources that are available for them. Confident, make friends. The video stressed that. I said that early on. When we think about that and think about us as adults approaching a complete stranger, and we have this kind of fumbling through words and hi, I'm so and so. Imagine what that is for a 5-year-old in a classroom environment, or even a school, in a big busy school playground, going up to somebody you don't know and asking to be a friend. Having those skills is really important, but they're not easy skills to develop. And to be socially ready allows children to be able to engage socially in a way that has that confidence being built within them to make those attempts at making friends. A child who asks for help can try new things, and a child that perhaps isn't fearful of failure, has that, oh, well, I'll give it another go type attitude is really important. If your child becomes anxious when they don't succeed in things, then school's all about pushing boundaries and challenges, and that they're going to have difficulty if they're not able to deal with things that are not always going to go right. Can recognise their name. That doesn't necessarily mean your child needs to write their name and their whole name, the first, the middle, and the last name. It doesn't mean that at all. It means your child's ability to recognise their name. So even if they're not holding the pencil or the pen in the appropriate grasp and able to do it, are they able to see their name written and know that it's their name? And that's why for you parents, I encourage you to write your child's name on different things around the house, whether it's their belongings on their bags, in a way that they can see their name. You might play word games and put their name in between certain words. For example, you might have a bit of a word game where if your child's name is Robert, you might have a couple of other words that also start with a letter R, and those pre-reading skills will allow them to distinguish. You might have Rabbit and Robert, and ask your child, which one's your name? So there's lots of these kind of activities that you can do with your child at home that really supports their understanding of what their name looks like. And when I say that, I mean the shape of their name. Do they have a really tall, I mean, the capital letter in front of their name is going to be generally taller than all the other letters, but do they have a G, where they have a squiggle, or a J? Or do they have lots of round shapes in their name? For example, like Ben has lots of round shapes. So if you haven't started that conversation with your child about what their name looks like, I really encourage you to be surprised how critical that is for your child having a sense of their own belonging. And if they're in a classroom and they've all got matching bags, how is your child going to know which one is theirs? The bags are all navy with a school emblem on there. They need to be able to recognise their name, even on their jumpers and things that we take for granted. You know, in childcare or preschool, our children wear different clothes, so it's easy to distinguish what they were wearing. It's not necessarily the case in a school environment. Okay, so we'll move on to having a bit more of a look at what do we do. At Paisley Park, we take school readiness seriously, and we engage in lots of programs and strategies and things that happen that really support your child's preparation. And we don't do that leading up to that end of the year. Generally, a lot of places, middle to the end of the year, start that process. Oh, we'll do uniform days and lunchbox days. And whilst we do all of those things as well, our program's a year-long program, and we start from January, work all the way through to December in our prep classrooms to implement a program that is specifically linked to school syllabus. So let me tell you a little bit about that. What I'm referring to, of course, is that the school syllabus has key learning areas, and those of you think back in primary and even high school, where we had subject areas like English, maths, history, science, and all of those subjects that we enjoyed learning about. The school syllabus contains within a particular content areas and skills and knowledge within those subjects that the teachers focus on when they're implementing their first program, whether it's in a kinder or prep or whatever your state refers to as that first year of schooling, in their program that is usually pre-developed. Now, the good news is that we have access to those resources because it's a framework. It's a school framework that is very familiar. And we use the Australian school syllabus as the basis to develop what we do. So in early childhood, we have what's a program called the Early Years Learning Framework, and that framework has been developed in Australia to support early childhood educators focus on key outcomes that support children's holistic learning. So what we do at Paisley Park is we look at the school syllabus and we look at our early childhood curriculum, and we kind of blend those together, and we provide that bridge between the two programs. So we challenge children to think a little bit beyond just that childcare space and more into structured learning within a balanced program. So we implement this in our Einstein room, which is generally their 4 to 5 year room in our centres, and our program is significantly linked to key social and emotional milestones, independence and friendships. It looks specifically at challenging children, engaging them in problem solving, hypothesizing, negotiating, collaborating. All of those key skills are so important in a classroom environment. But we do that together with play-based learning. We don't want to provide too much structure for children leading up to their formal schooling because we know that they're going to get that structure in the classroom. So we want to provide a balance of both play-based learning and structured learning and experiences. what we think is absolutely fundamental as we implement our program is to stay really connected with you and inform you about our decision making and the things that we do in our program. And we do that through newsletters, Facebook posts, and daily reflections, and just day-to-day general conversations that we have with you. We like to visit our local schools because we want your child to become familiar with what's in the local community. I might just flick across to show you an example of some of the kind of daily communication. We could probably skip this slide, Penny, because that was just a bit of an image of the frameworks and syllabus documents that we do refer to, just for your own purposes. And this just highlights for you some of the key areas that we focus on: successful learners, creative, confident and active and informed citizens. Those key things underpin our preparation program. So the next slide shows you an example. So what we do according to a school syllabus, which is rolled out according to terms. So we're just about to come into school holidays for most of you across states. If you have siblings that are already at school, some of you will start school holidays next week, or perhaps even the week after, or even this week for some of you across different states in Australia. And those terms are based on generally 10 to 11 weeks of school-based activity. So we replicate that. So our program is also based on terms, which is why you see at the top underneath the word languages, terms 1, 2, 3, and 4. As we replicate certain components of this program that may in fact be repeated throughout different terms. So what you see circled there is a particular focus from a school syllabus point of view around children's exploration of other types of language. And we know in a diverse country that we live in, that children communicate in various ways. And even the school syllabus wants children to become familiar with different modes of engagement, communication, and learning. Now, our early years learning framework also picks up on this. So our childcare curriculum also talks about how important that is. And what you see in the next column is a kind of experiences that we implement. Okay, and thank you, Penny, for zooming in on that. And the heading provisional experiences really summarize some of the day-to-day activities that we develop based on the early years learning framework and the Australian curriculum. So the next slide, as Penny will show you, will provide you an overall program. And what you circle there is an example under the heading languages. When you see at the top of the screen it says languages, and they're the kind of things that we've actually done. Okay, so you'll see as Penny scrolls up, we might have decided to implement this particular experience in a particular time of the week, and we're going to do that based on yarning circle or clapping skills or whatever, sticks or whatever we may do, purely because we want to ensure that those children are already exposed to that way of learning, the teaching of that important content. So in a classroom environment, a formal classroom environment, they're already seeing this. Our daily reflections look like this. So for the families who are Paisley Park already, this will be really familiar with you. But in case you weren't sure, when you saw these reflections, you might think, what are all these words? Well, now you can see the Circle Australian curriculum gives you that specific link. So when you see this every day and you wonder, why is my child sitting around the circle singing yarning songs and clapping sticks and all of those things, there's intent behind that. And the intent is that we are exposing children to content that has been identified as fundamental, not only in our early childhood curriculum, but also the school national curriculum that is implemented across all of our states. So you'll see lots of this kind of language come through our daily reflections. And Penny can scroll through to some other examples now of learning in action, things that you would see happening in our centres, the kind of words that you will see replicated in our daily reflections and photographs and experiences. Now, of course, these are samples across many of our centres from different states, so they may not relate specifically to your centre, bearing in mind we have over 20 centres across Australia. So these samples come from all of those different centres. And I'm conscious of the time, which is why we're scrolling through quite quickly. But those of you who are at Paisley Park, you would know that those primary school teacher visits happening in our SNIL Sports Heroes program, and various ways that we connect our local schools with the children's classrooms in our centres. Key thing for you to remember about that record for your child's learning in their journey, whether it's a Paisley Park or any other childcare centre that you might have experience with, or just an educational context. What we do that is fundamental is we prepare a document that is then sent with you, along with you, to your child's school leading up to their transition. And in every state, this document looks different. So on screen is a sample from Victoria. Queensland has a different transition to school statement. So is New South Wales. And they all look different in terms of the template, but generally speaking, they all they're intended for the exact same purpose, and that is to provide the incoming classroom teacher with a snapshot of your child's learning. So within the transition statement, there are parts of it where you fill out as a parent. What can you tell your child's classroom teacher about what they're good at, what they enjoy doing, what things they're interested in? There's a space there for us to fill out the kinds of things that we have observed, the learning that we have focused on, that we have seen engaged in the experiences that are implemented based on our weekly program. And there's even a space for your child to draw a picture of themselves and I suppose talk about their own aspirations and thoughts about that transition to school, what they think they're going to learn. Now, there are different versions of this, as I've said before, so they all might look different. But why are we sharing this with you? Well, the reason we're sharing this is it is initiated by us. So Paisley Park, we initiate the school transition statement, and we're in fact starting that process in the next few weeks and months, where we are looking at summarising your child's development. There'll be an opportunity to meet with you and discuss with you your own experiences with your child at home, to put together a collaborative statement that is a meaningful representation of your child's learning that you can then take to the incoming school and provide that snapshot for them. Now, feedback from local schools when they receive this document, it is so important for them. They treat the information within this document as a way to plan for the classroom, which child is better off with a particular classroom teacher. Is a child perhaps able to cope with a composite class? What I mean by a composite class is a kindergarten and year one in the same classroom. And they find out a lot about you and your child through having that information documented. So for those of you at Paisley Park, you will start to see some of this information being distributed to you in the coming weeks and months about us starting that process. So keep that in mind, because we'll be calling on you to help us complete that that statement. So let's go to the last lot of few slides for this presentation, and a bit of a summary of what we recommend. Key things for you to think about. For those of you in our Paisley Park centres, we provide lots of information. Even if you are not a Paisley Park family, if you go onto our Paisley Park website, we have so much reading available there for you. There are a lot of articles that are there, a lot of notices and information that's available for you about school preparation and things for you to consider. Another thing that I highly recommend is speak to your child about the school, about them going to school in a really positive way. Make an effort to drive past your local schools on the way to the shops or grandma's house or wherever you are going, and point the school out. Talk about the sign of the school, the facilities that you might see. Walk past them if we walk past the schools, and take note of the different types of things that they will see. Talk to them about at home about that. Remember, we were walking past the school. What did you see? Oh, I saw lots of trees. Oh, I saw some monkey bars. Oh, I saw a big building and had lots of words on it. These conversations are all going to lead to a positive view of the school, and they all contribute to your child feeling calm and confident and looking forward to that experience. As I've said to you before, find out about each school. Look on their website. Every single school in Australia has their own website, and within that website there are generally notices about upcoming events and fates and other activities for you to become aware of and transition to school experiences. The more connected you are to what your school is doing and the more time you spend in the school with your child, again, it's that familiarity, speaking positively will no doubt make your child feel calm about that transition. One key thing that I cannot stress is, you know, as you've been listening to this workshop, if you're thinking to yourself, look, I'm just not sure whether my child is ready. I know they're of age and they probably should be going to school, but perhaps they're not talking as clearly, or they tend to be a bit fidgety, or they are actually quite anxious and upset and difficult to settle. There may actually be some underlying difficulties there that you could get for your child before they embark on that journey to school. Simply talk to the teachers in your childcare centre or Paisley Park, to your local GP, stress to them some of your concerns. Find out whether what your child's exhibiting are things that perhaps require some further intervention, because the earlier that you get that intervention, the more successful of experience your child's going to have in that school environment. For those of you who are in the Paisley Park Centre, once you have decided what school you're going to send your child to, we'd love to know that information. The reason why is we can connect to that local school and find about the classrooms, any kind of experiences that school is having to support preparation, whether it's kinder days or any other kind of experiences. We can look at what kind of uniforms the particular school has. We often have samples of those uniforms in our own dress ups. We can start on visits to those schools and building a relationship. And we can actually start to talk about the school in our group times, in our discussions, to again build that positive attitude about where they're going to be going. And Annabelle is a child that's going to give you some other tips for starting school based on her own experience. And I couldn't resist when I saw this video and her own perceptions about school readiness. And I hope it brings a bit of a smile to your face.
You need to be nice and generous, be organized, get your things ready, be ready to learn, and try not to forget stuff. Like be nice, generous, yeah. And I would say hello to people, and I think you can't say mean things. If you say mean things, people will think that you are being a bit mean, and they don't like mean people.
No, that's right.
I think playing with your friends and learning different things. When your friends are being mean to you and you have to say, stop it, I don't like it. I think sometimes you can have a little rest on the mat and can have fun.
Okay.
I couldn't resist, everybody, when I was doing a bit of research around school readiness. And whenever I see experiences from a child's point of view, I think they're absolutely important. We talk about what we do as adults, but it's important that we talk to children, we get their opinions and views about how they feel. because those feelings are genuine and we need to acknowledge them, and we need to support the child dealing with the emotions of an unfamiliar environment, as well as all of those pressures with doing things in a different way. From even the fact that going to school every single day, your child might go to childcare or preschool once or twice a week, them going somewhere 5 days a week, having structure and doing things in a different way, even eating at different times of the day, eating different quantities, all of those things create a fair bit of pressure and anxiety for a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, or even a 6-year-old, if that's when your child starts school. So please be sure to engage in that conversation and take seriously what your child is saying. Now, just to finish up, everybody, in the next lot of slides, there are some great resources out there. This one was developed based on a lot of research, academic work, so it's quite a lengthy document, but it's designed to support other childhood educators and parents and schools manage that that school, preparation process, and lots of research is in there. There's a couple of other really good ones. The first year at school, which is on the next slide, and all of these links are available. And this is a really good one. It's a short book, but it gives you a bit of key information about what to look for, where to get help, what kind of resources to use, and so forth. And the last resource, which is an article that, in fact, I wrote some years ago, and it's available on our website. And this article I wrote on the back of a lot of work that I did with local schools at the time, where it was really about readiness, as I said at the very beginning, that triangle of readiness, not about the child being ready, but the school being ready, the community being ready, the family being ready, and all of us being ready together. Because let's face it, I mean, it's a bit of a, it might be a cliche to say children are our future, but in fact, they absolutely are. And we need to invest in them. And by investing in their first year of school and ensuring that is positive, that's going to set them on a positive journey throughout their entire schooling. And that's definitely what we want them to do. We want them to enjoy school, to be successful, and feel like a well-rounded individual that contributes successfully to society. And certainly we're seeing lots of challenging things happening around the world of late. So one thing that we can do is build our children's resilience and capacity to deal with challenges. And I think if we do that together as a community, then we're definitely making good decisions for our future. So that's me, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed this session. I'll start my video again so you can see my face. I'm definitely still there. So lots of information was shared, and I was seeing, if you heard me saying and it's because I actually saw little chat messages on the bottom of the screen. I was trying to read and speak at the same time. God loves Zoom and all these wonderful resources that we have at our disposal when we're dealing with the challenging times at the moment. So yeah, over to you, Penny or Renee, for any questions that you've seen come through that I may need to answer.
Yes, hi Kat, that was interesting, thank you very much. We've got one that's come through from Maddie, and Maddie is a family of ours at Maryborough, Victoria. And Maddie, it sounds like you're preparing to homeschool your children next year, which is great. Maddie's asking Kat whether there's any, she's also looking at doing perhaps 1 to 2 days of partial enrolment at a local school. So her question is there something that Paisley Park can do in terms of be an advocate for discussion with the school in terms of partial enrolment? This is Maryborough Vic.
Oh, Maddie, I'm loving what you're saying. And the reason why I'm loving what you're saying is I've got 2 children in high school, and who through the whole COVID challenge were doing homeschooling, and I suppose online in the best possible way that they could. And what I did see is I saw so many positives in them having that experience. And in my conversation with them, I've said quite recently that I'm a huge advocate for that, maybe 2 days on, 3 days off, and varying, because I think there's a lot to be said for concentrated learning in an environment that we as parents can control, and that is our home environment, as well as them having access to structured classroom time. So I'm more than happy to be an advocate. There are some wonderful resources out there about homeschooling, and there've been, in fact, a lot of it of recent, because parents all around the world are facing this predicament. So Maddie, I'd love to have some further conversations with you, whether it's about providing you with links to resources, or whether it's providing support in the way of us advocating on your behalf with a school, contacting that school, speaking to the school principal, and looking for ways that that decision that you make is supported. Now, where I see challenges, which of course are always going to exist with regardless of which approach you choose, face-to-face schooling, partial on and off, or complete homeschooling, it's not necessarily going to meet every single person's needs, and there will be challenges in terms of information sharing and also things around assessment. So assessment generally in a classroom environment happens when there's a particular activity whereby it's a controlled space. So sometimes there are equity issues that are raised by schools around, well, if your child's at school and it's a controlled assessment activity where they're all sitting at a table and they've all got the same pen and the same piece of paper and they all have to draw a certain thing or answer certain questions, how can that assessment also take place in an authentic and honest way if that child is at home, where that can't actually be monitored? So that is where the tricky conversations happen, because of course classroom teachers are engaging in ongoing assessment all the time. But Maddie, I'm all for it. I think doing a balanced approach where there's partial home, partial schooling in the world we live in is a good decision. It's not going to be a decision that will meet everybody's needs. And I mean, even my own needs, my children have gone back to school, face-to-face schooling, and life kind of goes on. But there are pros and cons with all approaches. So just tell us what your needs are, what we can do to help you, and happy to do it.
Thanks, Kat. We haven't got any other questions coming through at this stage. We've still got 22 people on at the moment. So everyone, if you do have other questions for Kat, please send them through. We're just getting a few wonderfuls, and thanks for your time. So that's good. Thank you, everyone. We do hope that you found the information helpful this evening. I will send out a follow-up email that includes a link to this evening's presentation, and we do appreciate your feedback. We apologise for the technical challenges that we're having at the start of the session this evening. Thank you for your patience. And if you do have any subjects or areas that you would like to know a little bit more about, and that perhaps we can share some of the experience across Paisley Park with you, then please let us know. There will be an opportunity to do that within the feedback form. But Kat, no more questions, so I think we can call that a night.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the beautiful comments on the bottom of my screen. It's just, we feel so passionate about the work that we do, and when we have this wonderful audience, we think good on you for taking the time out of usual family time or dinner time to spend your hour with us. We really appreciate it, and I can't extend that any further than to say I do lots of parent workshops about different topics, so please feel free to voice that in the forum, and yeah, till next time, have a wonderful evening, and thank you for your company.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.